Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maker's Bar. We are creating 1 million leaders. Today, I'm here with Dale Thomas. This is take 2, just so everybody knows. We have the recording going this time, and hopefully it doesn't shut off on us randomly. But Dale is a very impressive man, as you're about to hear. He is currently a founder at Actual Ops, and he wrote a bestseller about AI. It is called the Ultimate AI Guide. I'm very excited to share his story with y'all and to learn more about it. And we were actually just getting into the history of AI, so we'll get there as well. But first, Dale, let's tell all the people about your story here, your background.
Sure. So I have a very diverse background. I've had a couple different, 3 or 4 different career changes because I'm constantly learning new things and trying new things. But I guess it all started, if we were to go back to the 80s, when I was playing in punk rock bands, and I wanted to get into the music business. So there was certain bands that I wanted to see that no one would bring to town. So I'd started promoting them, and I found myself promoting shows in Sacramento, where I lived. And after a while, we had decided to, my best friend at the time and I had decided to move to Seattle, where the Seattle scene was really starting to take off around 1992. So we did that, and I was working with a lot of musicians there and booking shows, and I started doing tour management for some of our bands. So I did that for quite a while and moved to LA, and for a while with one of the bands, and did a residency at some of the more popular clubs. But it was always, we didn't have the tools like the internet, and it certainly didn't have the AI like we know it now. So it was always this punk rock, do-it-yourself mentality, that if you wanted to book a show, we didn't have anybody would book it for us other than myself. So you had to get really good at operations and logistics and sales and marketing, and be able to market yourself to these club owners, or the bookers for the club, when you're on tour and you're looking to pick up a show in the middle of, I don't know, Montana or Wisconsin. So you had to start developing a lot of these people skills. But after a little while of living in LA, I decided to move back to Seattle, because I figured it was time to kind of grow up a little bit more and start focusing on my career. And now I was in my late 20s, and my father was a computer programmer. I always tinkered around with computers. So I decided to start teaching myself how to fix hardware and software, and get certified in computers, which led into doing break fix at various places. Spent some time at Boeing on a contract, and my first gig was swapping out monitors. I think it was at a Lincoln car dealership, but in the middle of the night, after I was doing my full-time job, I'd go swap monitors out, and it was just kind of the ambition that I had to really get into the space, that the recruiter hooked me up with a contract role at Microsoft, which to me at the time was like the brass ring. So I did that for a year, then was offered a full-time job, which led into 10 years at Microsoft, from operations to ad tech, tracking down bad guys on the network. So it was a lot of fun to work there, and I loved working there. Even, of course, they had a lot of politics there, which was one of the reasons why I ultimately decided to leave. But there was a startup in New York City who recruited me. But I was going to work remote from Seattle, so I'd spend a couple of weeks in Seattle, go to New York City, and then after doing that about a year, I was asked to move to New York City full time. So I gave up my life, my house, packed up one of my dogs, and we moved to New York City. But startups being the way they were, and they pivot so quickly, the company got acquired, and I found myself out of a job just a couple months later. So I was able to fortunately quickly find another role at another startup, and did that for a while. But then I had met who's now my current wife, and she was in sales. And I really love this idea of being able to make as much money as you wanted in sales, and I decided to go to insurance because of the residual component of insurance, and I love that passive income, the thought of making passive income. So I left technology, went to insurance, and did that for a couple of years, and just finally was realizing just how incredibly difficult it was as a new person, just trying to start from the ground up. At the time, I had learned about this concept of fulfillment by Amazon, and I started developing consumable pet products. And I intentionally went to consumable pet products. That way, we again had that reoccurring buyers. And we were able to create several products for Amazon that we sold, and then decided that, well, I didn't decide. My wife had an opportunity to go to Atlanta for her job. So we moved to Atlanta for a little while. Um, and while in Atlanta, I decided to open two children's computer coding franchises. It was a startup company. So I was the first to open in Georgia. I opened up two locations. And of course, with every startup, it has its highs and its lows. And ultimately, I had to go back to work at a different startup as their director of operations. So I was juggling um, both of those balls for a little while, and until my wife was able to, or she was getting promoted again, but we had to move to Kansas City for her company since they're based here. So I saw that as an opportunity to finally unload my franchises at whatever it took pricing. So, which is what I did. And I moved here. I was working with my startup. She was starting her new career. And then I decided that I wanted to go into consulting, and I didn't want to necessarily work for anybody else other than myself and my customers, and which is what I did. So I started operational consulting, but this was right around like ChatGPT and all the AI, Gen AI tools started taking off. And the more I kind of played with it, and the more I started leveraging Gen AI and some of the different tools that we were using, the more I realized like this is kind of like where my passion lies. And especially once I realized that you can get generative AI to look across like different reporting, like financial reporting, and really helps find that needle in the haystack. So we decided to go all in, and I pivoted the consulting business to AI consulting. Now we still have some operations customers, but I had to figure out kind of how was I going to set myself apart from all the other quote unquote experts that are out there, because I certainly don't consider myself an expert. And one of those things that I started doing in my chatbot was asking, if you were to write a book, what would that framework look like? What would the chapters look like? And as it was spitting it out, I realized that I actually knew a good chunk of it. Now, there was like the history of AI. I didn't know. I knew a little bit, but so I had to do some research there. And but to address the 900-pound 900-pound gorilla, the very first paragraph of the very first sentence of the very first paragraph in my book is how I used AI in the book. And yes, I used AI for an AI book, but it was only about 10% of the book. It was around things I just knew nothing about, or industries I didn't know, like landscaping. I didn't know what tools landscapers would use or what kind of AI they could use in their operations. And that's really where I leveraged AI. I see AI as this tool more than like a human replacement, and that kind of just leads us up where we are at today. And just to kind of address like the expert thing I had mentioned, there's a lot of experts out there who have been doing machine learning and things for the last 10, 15 years, but I consider myself more of an explorer right now. I think it's kind of the wild west of AI, and everybody's kind of learning. I'm a lifelong learner. I spend the first hour to 2 hours every day learning something, and I consider myself an explorer in the wild west, in the new frontier. So I'm constantly learning, especially about AI, and AI agents is where Actionable Ops has been focusing. We also spend time around training on ethical AI, responsible AI, implementing AI through our partner Text Cortex. But now we're developing these agents for organizations, which has been actually taken off. So we're going to, of course, be spending more time focusing on the AI agent side of things. So I think that's where we're at now.
Yeah, no, that was a great
I think from the last
recap.
conversation.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. You covered it all again, and no, I appreciate you doing that too. So, kind of going down the conversation we were having before,
Mhm.
you kind of already touched on your lifelong learner, um, and that you did a really great job of kind of encapsulating your entrepreneurship and just like showing who you are in those like first 10 minutes here. So what we were talking about before was kind of like that history of AI. We were talking about how it goes back to the 50s. I already forgot the guy's name that had the first kind of thought of, hey, can
Oh,
they do what a human does?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'd love to learn from you kind of what the difference is now from, obviously the 50s to the 90s to here in the late or to 2020s, 2010s, and kind of how you've built your team, and gone about, finding this company. So if you want to start there, like what are the differences and what kind of prompted you knowing those to build your team the way you have?
Sure. So the concept was done in the 50s again with a guy named Alan Turing, and I'm 95% confident it was about when he developed the Turing test. It was just about, can intelligence replace like human intelligence, or a human task do what a human does without um, really any involvement from the human. And that was kind of the Turing test of whether something can do something, whether the human can do it or not, or the human task. So of course they didn't really have the technology back then, at least to my knowledge. And it wasn't until like the 80s and 90s with that it really started developing. And I think it was around the mid 90s where they had I think it was IBM had a AI chip called Deep Blue, which it won a chess match against the grandmaster. And again, this was around the 90s, and even back in like the late 70s. I remember my father having like an electronic chessboard that can like predict moves and help you learn
Mhm.
chess, play chess. I don't know if there's like AI built in. I imagine not, but it kind of reminds me every time I think about what Deep Blue was and how it won this chess match in the 90s and how it kind of led up to where we're at today. So now it's all about, at least for most people, it's all about the generative AI, the text or the images or the songs or whatever it is being created by AI, which is part of the whole AI ecosystem. It's a very small part because we have a lot of different tools out there. There's machine learning, which is kind of the backbone of AI, which is something that it's completely people that do that are the smart guys. I'm just more of a user of the tools versus the guys who actually the data scientists behind the models and the machine learning. So as far as where my team is, so I've recently taken on a partner who's in the financial services space because we are developing agents to help financial planners, which was our first agent. And because him and I kind of got along so well, we decided to partner on this, and we're still formalizing exactly what that looks like.
Mhm.
So it's him and I going to be driving on forward with actionable ops, and then we have I do have some remote workers, some folks in the Philippines. We have folks that build our bots, or excuse me, our agents for us, who are just really, really smart on the platform that we use. And I'm certified on the platform. However, he can build agents within a few hours where it'll take me a week or two.
Yeah.
So I continue my learning with it and becoming better and more proficient. Maybe I'll take on more, but I'd rather not be so in the weeds on the business and being able to work on sharing the message and making sales, generating revenue.
Yeah, no, being the CEO,
Yes.
explaining to everyone what this is and what you can do and how you can help, and showing the value and what you're providing. No, I love it. And being a lifelong learner, you've started a few companies, started a few franchises. Kind of, what were the lessons that you took out of those that helped you tackle the challenges, kind of in the initial stages of starting actionable AI here?
What was the lessons learned from the startup or from the
Yeah, what are
franchise?
some so yeah, what are some lessons learned from, I mean, you doesn't have to be the franchises in Atlanta. It could be, um, any kind of entrepreneurship or any kind of role you've had, growing a business, being a leader that you were able to take, like just having that knowledge, that experience,
Mhm.
even going back to the band days or the promoted days, that you were able to like implement here as your journey has gone on. Because I'm sure there were a ton of initial challenges getting this thing off the ground, and happy to hear about those too and kind of how you overcame those.
Sure. Well, I mean, anytime anybody, I mean, I think for the most part, takes on whether they're starting their own business, their franchise, whatever it is, it's it's like pushing a boulder uphill. And I'm a little older. I don't need to start a whole new business, especially kind of where I'm at in life. But I just get sucked into it. It's something I really enjoy. So I always forget just how incredibly hard it is because I love the process. So I guess one of the lessons that I've learned throughout the years is you got to maintain your mental health and not get so sucked into your business that you kind of forget and lose sight of everything. I think one of my biggest, not regrets, but as I was growing up, I was so focused on making it, and I was hyper focused, that I lost sight of many years of what like really was important in life, and family and friends, and building those relationships, where I let a lot of those relationships slide in order to get to the next stage of my career, the next bigger house or the bigger car or the whatever it is. And I've learned now that I've achieved some of that stuff, that it is really about those relationships with your friends and family. And I think a friend of mine started I think it's called the Founders Mental Health page, or the Founders Pledge, which is all about founders' mental health. And I think, if I recall correctly, like 60% of founders have like depression or some like disorder or some issue like depression. So there's certain like a definite type of mind and person that gets sucked into this type of job. So for me, I always kind of got to keep that in check, because working remote, when the house is empty all day, I got to remind myself to go out and go be around people, because it's very easy to get kind of sucked into this whole little world of my computer and forget that I need to go be around people. And so when we talk about things like partnerships, one of the things that I've been really wanting, it's, as they say, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go with a team. And that's really where I'm at now. And that was, I think, one of the things that I've learned throughout my career as well, other than make sure you're maintaining your mental health, is it's about leadership and how you're communicating with people and how you're leading these teams. And I look at my best managers that I've had at Microsoft and my startups, and I'd like, what was the personality traits they had that made me want to, that I call my McDonald's managers, where if they went and started working at a McDonald's, I'd be the first in line to go work for them, because they were just, and there's nothing wrong with working at a McDonald's, but they were just had such a great personality, and they were so charismatic, and they were so intelligent that I would really go to extremes to go work for them. And I tried to model myself after that. I don't know if I've done good or done well, but I've definitely tried to model myself after that.
No, I love that. So that's actually one of the questions I usually get around to asking towards the end. But since you brought it up, I do love to ask about, any mentors or books or lectures or whatever it may be that kind of inspired you on your journey and like taught you, had a significant influence, so to speak, taught you a lesson on your journey, and like who those people were. And you mentioned, I like that term a lot. I'm going to take that term, the McDonald's manager. That's a very good way of putting it, because again, nothing wrong with working at McDonald's, but that is kind of like the cliche saying that people go to. And I like that term a lot. But I know you mentioned their charisma, their intelligence. What were some lessons? Maybe those were the biggest ones there. But what were some of the biggest lessons that you took from those mentors, and who were some of these mentors that you're speaking of?
When I think about the lessons that I've learned from them, again, it was all about how they carried themselves, how they communicated. For example, one of the managers that I had was at Microsoft, and she, first of all, she was one of the most brilliant people I've ever met, known. She had a photographic memory, like a legit photographic memory, so she was absolutely brilliant. But she had this, and she was also, I think, a communications major, and she did Marcom before she came into the advertising space. But she was one of those managers that you just get, I'd say, get your hand slapped or whatever it is, but in your office, and you get redirected. But you'd walk out of her office and just be like, man, I just got my butt chewed, but I really love working for her. And I can't wait. And she just said it in such a way that you wanted to do better. You wanted to fix whatever the problem was, and you were happy to do it. And that was kind of the same with one of my other managers. He was a COO of one of our startups. He was just such a charismatic guy, and even though he was able to redirect you or to provide that structure, that critical feedback, he did it in such a way with so much finesse that I'm like, that's what I want. That's how I want to come off. Because I've struggled with communication throughout the years, where I'm a little rough around the edges, and I know that. And the manager at Microsoft, to give you an example, she had come to me, this was probably 15 years ago, and she was like, I want you to work on your finesse. And without missing a beat, I said it. I was like, well, what the hell is that? And she's like, exactly what I'm talking about. And now I look back, but at the time going, I'm so confused, because I had never really had somebody come talk to me about my communication style. So again, I'm not good at it, but I've gotten a lot better. And it's always about, as they say, progress, not perfection, because perfection is impossible.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be able to tell that was a weakness of yours. Just speaking with you now, you seem very charismatic, very upbeat. You're very passionate about what you're doing, and we speak here with leaders all the time. And you're right in line with everyone that I've come across as like a great leader. And also, you mentioned the mental health piece, which is, I think, a really big thing, especially for someone like myself. So young guy, I'm in my 20s here, late 20s now, getting up there. But
wow,
there's millions of people like myself who are like, we do want to make it. I love, my passion here really is talking to great leaders and people who want to change the world. And I have my specific areas of interest within that, but we want to make it, in a sense. We want to be successful. Whatever success means to each individual, but that usually means money or accomplishments or something of that nature. And you get very narrow-minded, and you get very tunnel vision on these things. So just the fact that you were willing to talk about that and say, this is not necessarily a mistake, but something I noticed I was doing in my earlier career, versus now that I'm closer to the ends of that career, I realized the importance of it, and it is something important to say and hear. And I had no idea about the founder stat that over 50 or 60% of founders have depression, and that is something interesting to look into. Actually, would be
maybe slightly off on those numbers, but it was on the I think it's called the Founders Mental Health page, is the organization that has all those numbers.
I'll definitely look into it. It is interesting because there really is probably a certain person, right, that takes a similar journey as that you have taken, that I kind of find myself taking too. I know we spoke before this about kind of my background. Something I didn't mention was my first venture. I was in college. While I was studying for that CPA, I started a vending machine company, and I was just very motivated, kind of the residual income thing, that whole thing. And I've come across a lot of people my age, some super successful, some like me, working day jobs, that there is this there's a different mentality there. And when you start talking to people, you can kind of just tell who kind of has that, and who's driven towards this lifestyle that you've lived yourself, right? That you've done all these things and you found your passion. And so it's just really interesting to hear, and just it's always great to hear from someone that has accomplished all these things on the other side of it. And on that note, you've kind of gone through the successes and failures. I would love to hear about a failure, quote unquote, that you've had that later became a success, or like, a very valuable lesson that led to a success? If there's anything that comes to mind there.
A failure that's been, I mean, there's all kinds of failures. I mean, every day there's like something I'm trying to learn from. And I think kind of go back to when I'm talking about, the communication you have and the relationships you're building. That is, I think, my biggest failure, is allowing those relationships to slide. And now it's all about, well, how do I maintain that balance? How do I build relationships or maintain relationships that are valuable? Because at the end of the day, I think that's really where it's at. So I think that's kind of, and when you're talking about like, what's the thing I'm thinking? Having that ability, that mindset to kind of do it. And you had mentioned this early on. There was a couple like resources that I leveraged early on that kind of changed my perspective. And I don't mean to be corny about it either, but when there was like Tony Robbins back in the day, and kind of understanding how to break through your own barriers, which to me was very insightful. And there was this, I can't remember where I learned about it, but this concept, maybe somebody made it up, maybe it was an actual test, but if you like took a jar of fleas and you put the lid on the jar of fleas and you kept it on there for a while, I don't know how long it is, but once you took the jar off, the fleas would not jump out because they were so used to having that lid on there, they would just stop bothering to jump out. And sometimes you got to remember that you just got to keep that lid off. And it's really your own barriers that really keep, I think, most people down, that don't allow themselves to take that next step, that they choose to live in a very small world without kind of seeing what else is out there. The other, person that I want to make sure that I at least referenced was Vanessa Van Edwards, who runs something called the People School, or the Science of People. And she has a course called the People School, or just People School. And Vanessa takes a look at the science and the data that goes into like relationships and charisma and what makes people likable, and the color of the clothes they wear and what people are attracted to. And she puts all this data behind it. And she's great. She does lie detection. And I've been a big fan of hers because I'm a data guy. And so is she. But at the end of the day, to be completely honest, and I just thought of it, and I can't even remember the name of the person. The person who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
Everything leads back to that book. Everything else moving forward is really just a repackaged version of that book. And I could look at about, I'm like, oh yeah, Dale Carnegie wrote about that. Well, way back when, 100 years ago.
Way back when.
Way back when. I'm thinking 100 years ago, but it probably was more than
that. It might have been. Yeah, no, I that book. So as I ask for books and things in my everyday life too, right? Not just in podcast form, but I love asking for books. Like one of the big things that I always ask for, because when I really started like thinking about business or long-term vision or what I want to do with my life and all these things, there's a few books you read like, oh, it really changed your mindset. You kind of get into reading and not just like a fiction book here or there. But and that's one that comes up constantly. So it's not the first time I've heard it. That's it. But it is always interesting to know, like hearing a new thing, hearing a new venture that someone's working on, that gathering all this data. And even then it just goes back to this book. It's like whatever it is, 100+ years old. It is just kind of wild.
It is true. There was a new updated version, like How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age, which I got on an audiobook a couple years ago. I don't listen to it much because I prefer the original. But every once in a while, I'll listen to the summarized version just to kind of refresh myself.
Any key lessons that you picked up on from that?
I think one of the biggest things is how to see it from somebody else's perspective. And this is still a challenge. Is most people, including myself, are so focused on what I want, how I want it, that we don't stop to think of what it is from the other person's perspective and what are they trying to accomplish, and how can I create this this win-win situation for both of us. And so I think that's from that book, that's like the main thing that I constantly think about. I was thinking about it over the weekend when I'm having trouble with my landscaper. They don't want to do some services that I think they should, that I thought was in the contract. So I'm trying to think through, how do I create a win-win for them when they underbid the contract is what really what happened. But I want to hold them accountable for what they told me that they could deliver on. So I'm like, how do I create this win-win? So maybe it's time that I find a PDF version of the book, upload it into my chatbot, and start asking it, how do I create this win-win with the landscaping company?
Smart. Bringing it back to AI. No, I love it. That's something we should get back into here real quick. So I'd love to hear your insights here. I know you say you're not an expert, but to me and to millions of others, you very much are. You're way ahead of us on this. So I'd love to hear your insights on where is this industry, where is AI going in the next 5 to 10 years, in your opinion? And then after that, kind of what's the vision for the next 10 years of your company?
Wow. 5-10 years in AI. To be honest, I don't know. There's, even I have anxiety around what's going to happen with AI, because as much good as it can do, I think there's going to be equally people out there wanting to do bad with it. So I don't know what 5 or 10 years are going to look like. I know, one of the examples that I give when I do podcasts is around being able to think of whatever type of movie it is you want to see, with whatever actors you want to see it in, and whatever whatever the theme of the movie is or the plot of the movie is. You're going to be able to create these customized movies or TV shows or whatever it is with just a little prompt. To me, that's really exciting and kind of scary at the same time. Kind of the flip side is, as we talk about kind of where AI is going, I see so many areas where people are going to start taking advantage of the AI. And when we're talking about what could be almost done right now, is the ability for things like somebody can clone maybe your voice, and I could spoof your phone number, now call maybe your parents asking for money, or because it's listened to all your podcasts and knows how you talk. So now it can, call, if you have a spouse or a partner or whatever, call them with your phone number. Hey, I got thrown in jail, I need money, or whatever it is. Taking advantage, my in-laws are in their 80s. They're, definitely a target for this type of thing. So I can see that happening.
I actually, one of my grandfather, when he was still alive, he got tricked. Thankfully, he called my dad, but he got a call. It's like it was supposedly my oldest brother. He's like, "Grandpa, I'm in Mexico. I need your help. Please don't tell dad. Don't tell dad." And then they hop back on the that's just some kid, but they hop back on the phone and we want you to send us this much money or whatever. And my grandpa calls my dad. He's like, "Spencer's in trouble." And he's like, "Spencer's right next to me. What do you tell?" And but no, it is scary. Like, no, I mean, a lot of it is very scary thinking about. There's always gonna be scammers out there. There's always gonna be parasites in the system, in any system. And like that's kind of one of the things that when I look to learn about the world, I think it's Ray Dalio. I think it was in Principles. He wrote about, if you want to find out the best system, look to Earth, look to nature. But in every system, nature, there are parasites. But thankfully, I think I'm an optimist. I must say that actually before I say this. But I think this is a time in history where we're actually thinking ahead for the first time. Like I think the worry and thinking, okay, what could go wrong, is actually ahead of the technology. versus in my lifetime, at least, social media came about just when I was in middle school, high school, that kind of age, and we had no thoughts about it until now. All of a sudden, we realize the damage it's doing to kids. And it's kind of a universal opinion of, hey, this is really bad for kids, but everyone's
Mhm.
on it, and now the kids don't want to get off it because everyone else is on it, and it's just we're already in this dilemma versus AI. The people like yourself that I speak to, you all seem to think like, okay, hey, no, this could be a real problem, and you're thinking about it, and so to me, that gives me optimism about the future of, I'm sure there's very good, smart people that are working on ways to counteract that, and um, hopefully keep the bad guys' success to a minimum there. But let's talk about your company specifically. Where do you see your company going in the next 10 years? What's the longer term vision here?
That's a good question, because I mean, a year and a half ago, I don't think many people knew kind of where we'd be at right now. And it's changing so fast. I mean, I remember, way back when ChatGPT first came on, and they started introducing their app. And I don't use ChatGPT, the web app, very much. I do use the GPT through the API, but uh, the phone app I use, and the only reason I keep maintaining my subscription now is because of the voice enablement. I forget what they call it exactly, but being able to have a conversation with ChatGPT. And I was recently converted over to the next version of that, where I'm playing this to my wife the other night as we're driving around, because that's where I use the voice thing, is in my car. Because now I can have conversations, and it's so real and so realistic, where a year ago no one thought this. So it's like, who knows what even 3 months or 6 months it's going to look like. I have no idea. To be honest, I have no idea what 5 months is going to, or excuse me, 6 months or a year for my business is going to look like. From a technology perspective. I'm hoping that we're able to create, agents for people, and be able to create custom agents faster and better than we ever have, and leveraging whatever the latest greatest technology is. But it's that's like a really tough question, as we're kind of just building the business
Yeah.
up. Figure out, well, what's the next 6 months going to look like, or excuse me, the next 5 or 10 years. I have no idea. Hopefully, I'm retired in 5 or 10 years. You never know.
Yeah, no, that's
Oh,
a good point. That's a good point. It is an ever changing technology, so it is hard to plan for that future. But I guess there are some things that I'm thinking of, like, are there company value? Did you have values for yourself that you kind of see reflected in the company in your day to day operations or your day to day decision making, or other values that you have installed that you think those would be kind of a more of a pillar for the company? Does that make sense?
yeah. So when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind around our values is do what's right for the customer. Always, every time. That is paramount. Um, just because we can charge thousands and thousands of dollars for setup or implementation, and if we have a cheaper solution that actually covers their needs, that we got to do what's right for the customer. At least share that information with them, and if they decide to go another route, that's one thing. But always do what's right with the customer. Do things ethically. Do things, being responsible. Not only responsible AI, but just being a responsible person. We're not here. I say I want to make $1 million, but I don't want to make it off that one customer. I'm not looking to. I think it's very important that I'm not trying to get over on every customer, take advantage of them, and treat customers with respect and how you want to be treated. Again, going back to the golden rule, which I think they covered in the book we were talking about earlier. Treat how it's not even the golden rule. It's there's one step up of I forget what it's called, but it's treat people better than you want them to treat you. So I remember this concept of in one of my careers, I was what's called a reserve police officer. I was in law enforcement, but on a volunteer basis. So I would do that after I'd go to Microsoft, and it was always when we'd go to the range, it was drilled into me that you leave the range better than you found it, and so that's kind of carried forward. Is like you treat your customers, or you treat those around you better than they treat you.
Like the platinum rule, almost.
Well, I think that's actually what it was called, the platinum rule.
Oh, is that really what it's called? Oh, wow. I never heard of this. When you said that, like, oh, that's a good point. I never heard of that. No, I love that, and that is a pillar that stands the test of time too, right?
And I think that's, when I had the retail franchises, are you familiar with like the NPS score?
I'm not.
So NPS score was developed by American Express, I don't know, maybe in the 90s, and you've definitely seen it. And it's the one question on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to a customer or to a friend or family? Everybody's looking for that, 8, 9, 10 score, and there's a whole methodology around the scores and all that. But now, of course, everybody that sends you the NPS score of that one question, which is really the NPS score is that one question, the moment you click on yes, they ask you 17 other questions, and it turns it into an annoying thing. But a score of 100 is unheard of across anything. I think my wife's company, she's in the data center space, they get a score of 80. We were able to achieve an NPS score of 100 when I had our franchises, because we had the values of, we treat the customers better than we treat ourselves, which is maybe why that we weren't as successful as we wanted to be, because I was willing to lose money if it was doing right by the customer. If that was, I'm not saying give a customer money if they didn't deserve it or it wasn't, but if it was the right thing to do, then we would do that. And that contributed to our employees. We had one of the longest retention rates of not only our customers, but our employees as well. And these were high school kids that can go do whatever, but many of them went through high school with us into college. And it wasn't until they were ready to leave college that they leave our organization.
Wow.
So, and we're really proud of that, because it's all about treating the people, your employees and your customers better than you want to be treated.
I love that. That is incredible. And then a couple more questions here. I can let you get out of here. But through your long journey here, through your career, which has been a super cool career, I think it's a very entrepreneurial, almost a guidebook to entrepreneurship, and like how, hey, this is what life can really look like when you're doing this. Were there any pivot points that you think back on, like maybe you would have done differently in your career, like anything like that kind of sticks out?
Yeah, so to be completely transparent and honest, the one thing I would have probably done is become more of a true expert in, whatever field, because I am a quote unquote a jack of all trades, master of none. I've heavily leaned towards technology, but the problem is technology to me, there's the new shiny object. I love learning about I'm a lifelong learner, so I love learning about new technologies. But that's kind of sometimes worked against me, because I have a limited scope in one area, but I have this very broad knowledge about a lot of areas, which is why I think, operations is really where it gravitated, because, anything from phone systems to sales and marketing automation to CRMs and all the tools that go into operations is where kind of I succeeded, because I did know everything from setting up insurance policies for employees to, doing whatever needs to get done. So, but I think I probably would have, tried to have more of an expertise.
All right, that's interesting feedback. I like it. And then I guess kind of closing questions here on the entrepreneurship side of things. What are some of the most critical skills that you believe an entrepreneur needs to succeed? And what would be some advice that you would give to someone looking to start their own company?
So I think the most critical skill is being able to communicate. And I know that's been a reoccurring theme in this conversation, but truly being able to communicate with people and build relationships with them is, I think, the number one thing. You could have the greatest, you're in sales, you may have the greatest product in the world, but no one cares if you come off like a jerk to them. No one cares if you can't share with them the value of what you're doing or the value of the product to them and show it in a way that it makes sense to them. So, being able to communicate with people, all kinds of people, and then being a salesman. And I'm not saying being, try to sell ice to like ice to an Eskimo. Or I guess that's not a good way to phrase that, but But you have to learn sales. I mean, because if you're an entrepreneur, you're a salesperson. Everything we do, you're a salesperson. I mean, really, if you do environmental services, a polite way of saying, janitorial, you're really kind of still a salesperson. You want to, make sure that you do the best job possible, that you're selling your services, selling your value to your employer. So you have to learn those skills. So communication and sales are the two everybody needs to know. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second part of that?
You kind of answered it there, but it was what would advice be that you would give someone looking to start their own company?
Yeah, so I guess those are the two things. Do what you love, and as a manager of mine at Microsoft once told me, do what you love and the money will come, which is only, I think, partially true. But you have to, I think, be absolutely passionate about what you're doing, because being an entrepreneur, starting your own business, is incredibly hard. I don't know why anybody would want to do it, because it is very difficult, even for something that's as hot in demand as AI and AI agents. It's still incredibly difficult. So if you're going to be spending time away from your family, spending countless hours thinking about things, do something that you're absolutely passionate about. And then the second piece to that is learn operations. That's the foundation to any company. I see so many. I mentor up at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and the thing we talk about is everybody's so excited to go start generating revenue and sell their product and make money, and we start talking about the operations of their business. What are you doing for your systems, your processes, your SOPs? And they look at me like I have three heads. No one wants to talk about building that foundation of a business, which I think is incredibly important, because a lot of times, it's like flying a plane without a manual. If you don't have that manual to tell you how even if it's your sales processes, you got to have these SOPs and these operational tools to help you be successful, or you're just flying by the seat of your pants and going, whatever direction the wind blows you.
That makes sense. I agree with both those things. My first job out of school actually was consulting, like ERP implementation and change management. And I just dove so deep into swim charts of different companies. I was like, okay, this makes sense. This is how you get from this click to this click, and this is where this is going, and this is going. And so I've definitely seen the value in that. It makes a lot of sense. And finally, I keep saying a couple more questions, but I promise. I noticed when I was doing some research on you, you're a public speaker now too. So I'd love to hear about that. What are you speaking on? Is it AI? Is it leadership? Kind of what are you doing there in that Kansas City area?
So that is a new venture that I was asked by the Kansas City National Speakers Association to join the local chapter. It was primarily because of the book. So it's new. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to take me. But when I was approached, I told them that I wanted to work more on my presentation skills. Because again, when I talk about being a salesperson, it's all about presenting and communicating. So I wanted to work on my presentation skills, and they just said, this is the place for you. So this is why, I've done it. I do speak on different AI things here in Kansas City, different events. We're doing a workshop actually at the end of this month. But there's the Kansas City AI Club where I've spoken at a couple times on different things, and it's doing more speaking. And we'll see where that goes. It's one of those, outside of my comfort zone. I don't do well on stage. I don't do well in front of a lot of people. This is why I managed bands. Even though I played, I hated it. I had major strains.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a growth moment right there. It's something that you're doing that's outside the comfort zone. I love it. That is incredible, truly. That's awesome. And finally, last question. What do you have coming up here next in the coming months?
Professionally,
professionally, personally, what's coming up for you? What's coming up for Dale?
Well, that's a good question, because I would say as you being from Kansas would know that the American Royal Barbecue competition is being held here shortly. where I am a certified judge, and I've been judge of barbecue, but I've been put on a diet by my doctor, and it's been incredibly difficult for me to eat, a lot of barbecue. So that was coming up. So I'm disappointed about that. But I think my wife and my daughter are going to Florida. Somehow they were able to finagle a couple tickets to Taylor Swift in Florida. So they're flying there to go see Taylor Swift with all of her other 8-year-old friends. So there's like three or four of her friends that are going, and the moms. And so I'm debating on. I think I'm going to go to New Orleans for the first time.
Very cool.
In weeks. So that's what's on that's what I'm thinking about. So if I want to do that, and I really do.
Enjoy that. I went there when I was 21. Took a road trip from Lawrence, Kansas, where I went to school, all the way down there. I can't remember why anymore. If there was like a KU was playing there or something, but it was a fun weekend. So, and it's such a cool city too. One of my favorite books, and I guess especially business books, it in a sense at least, is The Fish That Ate the Whale.
Oh wow, I've not heard.
Sam Zamuri, I think it should be an HBO show. It is truly incredible. Sam Zamuri, he was this is kind of his story. So he was a Russian immigrant, didn't speak English, ended up in New Orleans, just working at a shop as a teenager, and but just always worked. That's what he did. Very first generation American thing, and came across a banana peel. Like, what is this thing? And he started his banana business by taking these ripes, things that are basically brown and basically, almost to the point of being, not edible and just gone. And everyone wasn't selling them. And so he just take them super cheap and ship them across, on the railroad, be in the railroads with them, sell them. And he made a profit the first time he did it. It's like, okay, I made money. And then you fast forward, and if you've heard of the Banana Republic, he is the reason that kind of got its name. I'm blanking on the banana company that he took over. So he ends up taking over the biggest. It's like one of the biggest companies in the world. He ends up taking them over, and then he ends up overthrowing governments.
Oh wow!
So and he kind of built up the whole two-lane. School, university there. A lot of things are in his name or his daughter's name or whatever it may be. And it's just an incredibly fascinating story. Like morally gray, there's morally good, there's morally bad in there. Like, but it's just, to me, it's like an all-time, if not the all-time American entrepreneur. Like, this is what America is. This is what you can do in this country. Like, from that moment of dirt broke, what is a banana, to you're taking over, basically overthrowing the biggest company in the world, to overthrowing government, and defying the U.S. government in the process, by the way. And like, it is truly just an unbelievable story. I think someone like yourself would really enjoy it. And if you find yourself in New Orleans too, it might be one little extra thing that you see, like, oh wow, that's cool. So maybe check that one out if you get the time. But Dale, I can let you go because I've had you for over an hour. I know it says just about an hour here on the recording, but I've had you for over an hour. So I can let you go. I look forward to staying in touch and seeing your journey. It's been great speaking with you and like just being able to learn everything. So until next time, sir, I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun to be here. It really was.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'll have you back on here a year or so from now, and we'll see where the growth is and hear about the trips and everything there.
Sure. Sounds great.
All right. Talk to you then. Thanks again.
Sure.